So I was wondering for a moment if I got kicked off the agenda, right? That would have been real fast. It's happened before. Okay, so thanks for that very kind introduction, for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to this group. For me, it's always an opportunity to get outside of Washington, D.C. and come talk to groups like this. This is where a lot of things are really happening and things that we really care about. So again, my name's Christopher Smith. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Fossil Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. And what I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about the intersection between energy and manufacturing, some of the things that we really care about in terms of some of the developments in terms of energy security, job creation, and also how that interacts with our concerns about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to the conference today. So I head up the Office of Fossil Energy. So within our portfolio, we have oil and natural gas. We have the Office of Clean Coal that's focused on carbon capture and sequestration, and also the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is the largest petroleum reserve in the world, down in the Gulf of Mexico, in New Orleans and Texas, 4 sites where we have about 700 million barrels of crude stored for energy security for the United States. So we're primarily a research and development organization, as the Department of Energy is primarily charged with developing the technologies that are going to power the clean energy economy of the future. So that's primarily what we do within the Department of Energy. But we also have a lot of interest in policy, lots of interest in working with state and local governments to make sure that we're working together to advance our energy future. It's a really exciting time to be doing this work, to be working on fossil energy issues. I came here in 2009. I came to Washington, D.C. in 2009. Previously, I'd spent the prior 11 years with Texaco and subsequently with Chevron after Chevron acquired Texaco. And so in the short time that I was there, those 11 years, I joined in 1998. And in 98, as some of you will remember, oil prices were $11, $12, $13. It was an interesting time to be joining an oil company whose business model depends on producing oil. And in the 10 years between 1998 and 2008, we saw prices go from $11, $12 to $140, $141. Just a dramatic swing in prices, and now we're where we are right now at around $50. So oil prices have moved a lot, as have natural gas prices. One of the last things I worked on when I was at Chevron was a project called Sabine Pass. That was a project that was being managed by a company, at the time a small company called Cheniere, down in the Gulf of Mexico. And the idea there was to import natural gas from Angola, from Australia, from different parts of the world, because the view then was that the United States was going to have to import large quantities of natural gas in order to meet our domestic requirements. So I worked on a lot of the commercial work, a lot of the modeling, a lot of the work we did around understanding arbitrage opportunities to bring natural gas to the United States. Fast forward a few years, one of the main regulatory responsibilities that I have at the Department of Energy is regulating the export of natural gas. And as some of you in this audience know, that very same terminal that was importing natural gas has now been converted into an export terminal to export natural gas. So I went from being in the private sector importing natural gas as LNG to being in the public sector overseeing exports from that very same terminal, sending United States gas to other countries around the world. And that terminal is a multi-billion-dollar investment that's currently being developed. For me, that kind of encapsulates the nature of the change that we've seen here over the last few years. And the tremendous opportunity that it raises for the United States, for energy security, for job creation, for a lot of opportunities, including the opportunities to bring manufacturers back here to the United States. A lot of projects that would have been inconceivable 5 or 6 years ago are now being conceived and financed and getting to final investment decision and being constructed, largely because we now have a much greater degree of confidence about the long-term sustainability of our supplies of domestic natural gas, and that's a good story. The LNG debate has been a enthusiastic one, I'll say, and certainly there are very strong views about what we should do, about the potential to export natural gas that's produced here in the United States. I've had the opportunity to testify as administration witness before Congress on 13 occasions over the last 4 years, and probably about half of those have been on this single issue. So the Natural Gas Act gives us authorization over looking at exports, and we have to weigh a variety of benefits, everything from job creation to price impacts on manufacturers, impacts on families, benefits from increasing or making more beneficial our balance of trade. All of these things are factors that we have to take into consideration. But overall, it's a great problem to have. Right? It's a great opportunity to be in a position where you do have a potential surplus of natural gas and that you can do a lot of things with it, including potentially creating some manufacturing opportunities to build plants and export that natural gas to other economies. So the LNG debate has been is something we've spent a lot of time on, and it's critically important that we get that public interest determination right and we make defendable decisions. Overall, we're very enthusiastic about the long-term sustainability of natural gas. It's brought a lot of positive things to our economy, a lot of jobs that are created from extracting, a lot of benefits from lowering the cost of natural gas, which is a feedstock for a lot of important manufacturing processes, the potential to perhaps diversify some of our transportation sector from being oil-based to being natural gas-based, which would decouple some of our vulnerabilities to international global markets. All of these are really good things. We've also seen some advances, I think, in our collaborations with industry to make sure that the wells are drilled in a way that's safe, that is environmentally sustainable, and that we earn the confidence of the communities who live and work close to where all of these wells are being drilled. That's something that wasn't always being done well. I think that that's something that has improved over the last few years. You know, and a comparison that I like to make when I talk about that topic, you'll all remember the BP Deepwater Horizon accident in the Gulf of Mexico, where we had that well blow out in 5,000 feet of water. Very, very dramatic event. I was a federal official that was the designated federal official for the commission that the president created to do the root cause investigation of the Deepwater Horizon. And we had the challenging task of figuring out what went wrong with that well and with that process in a time where things were still going wrong, right? You still turn on CNN and you'd see the live feed from 5,000 feet of that well belching hydrocarbons into the Gulf of Mexico. The capping stack had not yet been designed or conceived of. The cofferdomes had not yet been built or tried. Everything they were trying from the top kill and everything else was not working at the time. And we did the first public call that we did, or the first public setting that we did for that commission, was in a large auditorium, not unlike this one right here, with 2 microphones where people could come up and talk about what their concerns were with this ongoing ecological disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. And at the time, the well was still blowing out. The entire industry was closed down. So if you made money turning the drill bit somewhere, you were at home. No one was working. No one knew when they were going to be getting back to work. Fisheries closed. Hotels closed. Beaches closed. So certainly an ongoing, very difficult situation, and lots of tension in the room, as you can imagine. People talking about what their concerns were, so that the commission could get some guidance from the public. So that ended, as we know, that ended the capping stack work. The well was closed. The Gulf of Mexico is now back to work. You fast forward a couple years, and we had a very similar hearing in Pennsylvania, just on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, on shale gas and hydraulic fracturing. So the topic there was, can we drill these wells safely? Do we understand issues around fracking, around chemicals that are being used? This was in the shadow of Gasland, which was a very popular movie that covered some of the challenges around shale gas and hydraulic fracturing. So very similar audience, or very similar setup, 2 microphones, audience full of people. And I'll say that, and at the time there was no well being blown out, right? There was no ongoing ecological disaster. It was just concerns about practices and industry and this butting heads between people who live in the community and companies that are coming in to do the drilling operations. And I'll say that hearing was an order of magnitude more difficult than the one that I did 2 years previously, when there was an ongoing ecological disaster in the Gulf of Mexico with an active blown out well. You had industry had bus loads of people, to cheer for the side. Environmental community had bus loads of people from different communities to come cheer for their side. Whenever someone stepped up to the microphone, there would be this din of noise, and they're singing and T-shirts and all this racket. And well, every time someone would come up to the microphone, everybody would have to get quiet so you could figure out if that was your guy or the other guy's guy. And then as soon as you figured out who it was, then you could figure out if you were supposed to sing or jeer. It was a real circus. But that was the environment that we had a couple years ago. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and there are a lot of root causes I could get more deeply into. But what I will say is that that's gotten better. I think a lot of that comes from companies stepping up to the plate and adopting better practices. I think it comes from the state governments getting their hands around the practices. I think it comes from good collaboration between the Department of Energy and local regulators in terms of putting good science to quantifying the things that people are concerned about, because there are some real concerns that you do have to take seriously. And the spirit of responsible production has gotten better. And what that's done for us is not only kind of get rid of a sometimes unuseful simultaneous monologue, but it has also increased our confidence that we're actually going to be able to take this resource in the ground and turn it into something that's going to be beneficial for American businesses and families. So that's been a positive evolution. It's not finished. I mean, as our secretary has said on various occasions, we are very confident that all of the risks for shale gas production are manageable. There's a difference between manageable and managed, and you can still do things badly, and so it's our job to make sure that collectively we do accomplish all of these activities in a way that's safe and sustainable, and that's going to give us a license to operate to ensure that those resources get out from the reservoir to the burner tip, and they create the right type of prosperity for our country. The last thing I'll mention is the work that we're doing on coal. So in our research and development budget, by far the largest part of our budget is in our annual budget ranges between $700 million and $800 million a year. Most of it is in research and development, and most of that is in the Office of Clean Coal. Carbon capture and sequestration to reduce the greenhouse gas footprint of coal production and ensure that all of our forms of domestic production, oil, natural gas, and coal, are part of the clean energy economy of the future. That's a program that we have a lot of enthusiasm for. It's one that we think is really important. We do believe that we're going into a carbon-constrained future, and that's going to require us to continue to develop the technologies that are going to power the economy of the future. So we're working on wind and solar and enhanced geothermal and small modular nuclear reactors. But if you care about energy security and you really care about reducing anthropogenic CO2 to sustainable levels, you have to develop the technologies around reducing the environmental footprint of coal. Coal makes up 40% of the electricity that we use here in the United States. It's domestically produced, it's plentiful, it gives us good source diversity from other sources of energy, so we think that's incredibly important. We've got several major demonstrations going on around the United States to demonstrate new technologies. One that we had groundbreaking on not too long ago is a project I'm particularly enthusiastic about. It's a project, it's a collaboration with NRG Energy, taking place in Petronova Parish, just south of Houston, Texas. So it's at the largest coal-fired power plant in the United States, just south of Houston. One company, NRG, is investing in the post-combustion capture, so they're capturing the CO2 that's coming out of the plant. They're investing in the pipeline, the CO2 pipeline that's going to take that compressed CO2 from the site to a depleted oil field. They, along with Hilcorp, are investing in the oil field itself, where they're going to be using the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery in this depleted field to produce barrels that otherwise would not have been produced. So it's one company that's all the way through the value chain. They own the plant. They're investing, along with DOE, in the post-combustion capture. They're investing in the pipeline that's going to take the compressed CO2 to the field, and they're also investing in the field. When we initially competed that project and NRG won it, it was a 60-megawatt project. So there were 60 megawatts that NRG was investing in. That was going to be a joint investment with DOE, so that was partially subsidized by our office. When they did the front-end engineering and design and understood how much CO2 they needed for the pressurized pipeline and for the field, they realized that the CO2 that they're capturing out of the plant was not nearly enough for their business model, so they had to quadruple the size of that post-combustion capture. So they went from 60 megawatts to 240 megawatts, but at no additional cost to the taxpayer. So essentially you have a 60 megawatt project, and on top of that you have a 180 megawatt project that was completely financed through the balance sheet of a private sector company. And so not only are they going to be capturing the CO2 instead of releasing it into the environment, but they're also going to be maintaining a business model whereby they're recouping the cost from the capture through those additional barrels that they're producing, which creates a lot of opportunity in that field, and also is just a little bit less oil that we have to import from other countries. That's the business model of the future. That's something that we're really excited about. And in doing these projects, because being as many of you know, being first of a kind is not always easy, it's not always comfortable, but you need that first of a kind so you can get learnings from the process of building the plant, building the project, and so the next ones become even more economic and even more beneficial. So that's an overview of some of the things that we work on, some of the things that we're doing. It's really important, the interaction between our office and the states, particularly in exploration production. Many of the things that we work on when the rubber hits the road, when the rules are being written, these are being written in state houses across the United States. There's we endeavor to have a national strategy for these things, but at the end of the day, there's 32 different oil and gas producing states, all of whom have their own regulatory environments, all of whom have their own processes and procedures and laws and processes for collecting taxes and royalties. They're all different, but many of the challenges are the same. And so taking the technological development that we do, right here in West Virginia at the National Energy Technology Laboratory that's based in Morgantown, and taking those learnings and sharing them with state legislatures across the United States is something that's of a high priority for us. So I'm going to have an opportunity to meet with some legislators here in West Virginia while I'm here today. I'll be meeting with Governor Tomlin later on in the afternoon. And in terms of this state-federal collaboration, I think we've got a lot of really useful and beneficial things to discuss. But with that, I want to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to come and talk before this group. Always a valued opportunity to talk to a group of senior decision makers and subject matter experts. And with that, again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I don't know if we're going to take questions or what our next step was.
Do we have anyone who has a question? We have to entertain them.
Does the DOE have any specific plans or projects going on to encourage the use of natural gas in transportation?
Absolutely. So that's actually a really good question. So we have my group looks at kind of the extractive portion of it, research and development for the safe extraction of oil and natural gas, and this safe utilization of coal. We have another group called EERE, Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, that's looking at vehicle technologies, everything from natural gas powered vehicles through electric vehicles. So there is a lot of work that's going on within EERE and within a separate group that's called ARPA-E, that's modeled after the DoD DARPA group that does the kind of the real cutting edge research and development technological programs. So one thing that we're not doing is making a decision about which way the market's going to go. One of the challenges on natural gas vehicles, or maybe lack of challenges, is that there's not a real technological barrier to natural gas vehicles. I lived in Bogota, Colombia for 3 years before I came to Washington, D.C., and all of their fleets, their taxi fleets run off of natural gas because they have lots of stranded, very low-cost natural gas, and so they just do it, right? Here our challenge is we know how to build natural gas-powered vehicles, but there's no stations, and there's no stations because people aren't buying the cars. No one's buying the cars because there's no stations. And so that's an infinite loop that you have to figure out how to cut. Same thing for electric vehicles. So the markets are going to determine how that works. We are doing some work, for example, on, like, one of the challenges with natural gas vehicles is that people don't want to lose their trunk, right? Because you need space to actually carry the compressed natural gas. And so we're looking at adsorbent materials that you're building these tanks out of that changes the molecular composition of the natural gas, makes it more dense, whereby you can get more BTUs in a smaller space, and you can have a smaller vessel that's carrying the natural gas, therefore you got more space in the vehicle. So we are doing some work along those lines in collaboration with industry, and we'll see as plentiful supplies of natural gas demonstrate themselves, kind of where the market takes us. Sir?
Is that me looking at other uses of CO2 other than enhanced oil recovery?
We are. So the challenge with reducing the greenhouse gas impact of coal-fired power plants is that you just have enormous, tremendous, huge quantities of CO2 that once you capture, you got to do something with it. All right. So plan A is you put all that CO2 into a saline aquifer. That's the thing that we know how to do. We know where the saline aquifers are, and it's a sustainable, well-understood method of dealing with the CO2. The second methodology is enhanced oil recovery. The great thing about EOR is that when you put the oil in the ground, you get some beneficial use out of it. You produce a barrel that otherwise would have stayed in the ground and would not have been produced. A third methodology that we're looking at is catalyst technologies and processes and procedures that would allow us to take the CO2 and turn it into some other usable solid material, either to build things or bicarbonate soda or other things that you could do with CO2. The challenge there is that the quantities that you're dealing with are so enormous that it's hard to make a dent in the amount of CO2 you have to utilize using those technologies. The benefit to that, however, is that if you can have some beneficial use that you can make a saleable product out of, you can subsidize or you can cover the cost of the capture, and it helps offset the cost. So we are working on all those things, and we've got some really smart scientists and engineers in Morgantown and in Pittsburgh that are working on those technologies in collaboration with academia and with industry.
We have time for one more question, if someone has one. And if not, well,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.